Since Joseph could no longer control his feelings in front of his servants, he sent them out of the room. When he was alone with his brothers, he told them, "I am Joseph." Then he cried so loudly that the Egyptians heard him and told about it in the king's palace. Joseph asked his brothers if his father was still alive, but they were too frightened to answer. Joseph told them to come closer to him, and when they did, he said, "Yes, I am your brother Joseph, the one you sold into Egypt. Don't worry or blame yourselves for what you did. God is the one who sent me ahead of you to save lives. There has already been a famine for 2 years, and for 5 more years no one will plow fields or harvest grain. But God sent me on ahead of you to keep your families alive, and to save you in this wonderful way. After all, you weren't really the ones who sent me here, it was God. He made me the highest official in the king's court, and placed me over all Egypt. Now hurry back and tell my father that his son Joseph says, 'God has made me ruler of Egypt. Come here as quickly as you can. You will live near me in the region of Goshen with your children and grandchildren, as well as with your sheep, goats, cattle, and everything else you own. I will take care of you there during the next 5 years of famine. But if you don't come, you and your family and your animals will starve to death. All of you, including my brother Benjamin, can tell by what I have said that I really am Joseph. Tell my father about my great power here in Egypt and about everything you have seen. Hurry and bring him here." Joseph and Benjamin hugged each other and started crying. Joseph was still crying as he kissed each of his other brothers. After this, they started talking with Joseph. When it was told in the palace that Joseph's brothers had come, the king and his officials were happy. So the king said to Joseph, "Tell your brothers to load their donkeys and return to Canaan. Tell them to bring their father and their families here. I will give them the best land in Egypt, and they can eat and enjoy everything that grows there. Also, tell your brothers to take some wagons from Egypt for their wives and children to ride in. And be sure they bring their father. They can leave their possessions behind, because they will be given the best of everything in Egypt." Jacob's sons agreed to do what the king had said, and Joseph gave them wagons and food for their trip home, just as the king had ordered. Joseph gave some new clothes to each of his brothers, but to Benjamin, he gave 5 new outfits and 300 pieces of silver. To his father, he sent 10 donkeys loaded with the best things in Egypt, and 10 other donkeys loaded with grain and bread and other food for the return trip. Then he sent his brothers off and told them, "Don't argue on the way home." Joseph's brothers left Egypt, and when they arrived in Canaan, they told their father that Joseph was still alive and was the ruler of Egypt. But their father was so surprised that he could not believe them. Then they told him everything Joseph had said. When he saw the wagons Joseph had sent, he felt much better and said, "Now I can believe you. My son Joseph must really be alive, and I will get to see him before I die." Jacob and his family journey to Egypt. God reassures Jacob in a vision, and Jacob offers sacrifices in gratitude. In Egypt, Joseph prepares to meet his father, and they have an emotional reunion. Joseph presents his family to Pharaoh, and they settle in the land of Goshen. The famine worsens, and Joseph manages Egypt's resources wisely, buying all the land and people for Pharaoh, except for the priests. He ensures that the people have food during the famine. Jacob blesses Joseph's sons, Ephraim and Manasseh, elevating them to equal status with his own sons. Jacob prophesies about their future greatness. Jacob blesses his 12 sons, speaking prophetically about their futures. He foretells Judah's leadership role and mentions men from Judah's family will be kings, and this kingship will not leave his family until the Messiah comes. Jacob dies, and Joseph mourns deeply for him. Joseph receives permission from Pharaoh to bury Jacob in Canaan, fulfilling Jacob's final request. After Jacob died, Joseph's brothers were worried. They were afraid that Joseph would still be mad at them for what they had done years before. But Joseph reassured his brothers of his forgiveness once more, and he lives to see his descendants grow in Egypt before he dies at the age of 110. Joseph is embalmed and placed in a coffin in Egypt, setting the stage for the eventual exodus of the Israelites.